Alright guys, so next up is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. And today I'm going to talk about the theatrical cut because I feel like both of these cuts are worth talking about. Even more so than Halloween 2, which I did 2 cuts for. Like I reviewed the theatrical cut and the TV cut. This one is even more different than that, where Halloween 2, the TV cut kind of just switched scenes around and added a couple little scenes. This movie actually changes. If you're, depending on which version you're watching, they feel like totally different movies in a lot of ways. And watching the theatrical version again, which is the one I'm going to talk about today, it's really a bad movie in terms of just being a movie. Like, it is so butchered, and it has so many stupid moments in it that it makes me question how the fuck they even thought that this would succeed at all. And the producer's cut was the original, closer to intended cut of this movie, but the theatrical one is the one we got in theaters because the producer's cut, similar, didn't get good praise from 14-year-olds who wanted to see Friday the 13th style kills, but make it ADHD and really stupid. And that's what this theatrical cut is. This theatrical cut really does suffer from extreme gore, which, I mean, I'm not opposed to that, but as a Halloween movie, I'm like, it takes me out of it a little, especially if you're just watching the first one, in terms of like how that's not violent at all. This one is extremely violent on purpose because these 14-year-olds in these screenings wanted to see, like I said, Friday the 13th style kills. They wanted to see another type of movie. They didn't want to see a old style horror movie that is not very violent and more based on suspense than on the money shots, like the gore. And the theatrical cut, just rewatching it is really bad. The producer's cut is better, but there's things I like less about that than this one. But we're going to talk about the theatrical cut today. The theatrical cut, starting out, does have this ADHD type of intro where, like, I do like this intro, though, to be honest. I think it's cool, where credits, you hear Jamie Lloyd just saying, "Uncle Michael, please don't hurt me." And then it does this jump cut with the scream of all these scenes in the movie so quick that you can't tell what's going on. And it's the least ADD moment in the movie where I thought it was actually fine, because it was cool showing all those scenes while hearing this, like, scream. I thought that was a cool moment, a cool way to open it. And it really was interesting doing it in this version with that. And it starts out with Jamie Lloyd, now 15 or 16 years old, not played by Danielle Harris anymore because of there was disputes based on money and based on her being too young to be put in the movie, even though she could come back for the movie. But so much shit involving her, which she got the poor end of the deal, and it really sucks because she really should have come back, even if this was a bit part, because in this version she literally dies in the first act, her character. But it would have made better with continuity and better with me and a lot of the fans, in which bring Danielle Harris back. She was the character in these first 2 movies. Like, why would you not bring her back again? That to me was really insulting. And J.C. Brandy replaces her, and J.C. Brandy, honestly, I think is fine. She actually looks like Jamie a lot in ways, but she looks like Danielle Harris a lot in ways in this movie, and I think that she did a fine job for being only in the first act of this movie, because she literally is introduced and is killed off, which from a character standpoint, that is lazy, cheap, and kind of insulting. But it wasn't as insulting as, like, say, Rachel dying in Halloween 5 or Laurie dying in Resurrection. It didn't feel as insulting, but it was still kind of insulting. It's like, she was the character of the 4 and 5. Why did you fuck this character over and make her literally just die at the beginning of the movie? Like, that, to me, is really shitty. But it starts out with Jamie giving birth. In this version, we don't figure out whose baby it is. I'll leave that for the producer's cut. But Jamie is giving birth down underground with this cult And I know what you're thinking, what the fuck is this? Like, what the fuck is with this movie? And being a Halloween movie, it is so far away from the first movie that it's downright, like, silly, like, in a way. But this movie is fascinatingly silly. Like, I can watch it a lot. Like, I do enjoy things and aspects about it, but it's really so disconnected from the first one. It's insane how disconnected this is. John Carpenter would not liked this movie. I don't think he saw it. I think he said he saw a couple of them. I don't know if this is the one, but he said the ones that he saw were terrible. So this just, even though, like, the people involved, like it's a movie. It gave people, like, jobs and careers, but just the movie itself is so, like, so far apart from what the original Halloween was intending to be. And they say things in this movie that kind of connect to it, which I thought was cool, but it still felt so much different than the first one. And most of the sequels do, but this one feels the most so far like being different. So yeah, she's in that cult location. She has her baby. The man in black from the last movie, who we never got an explanation for in the last movie, is back. He takes Jamie's baby, and then this one girl who's watching over her somehow gets the baby and says, "Come on, Jamie, we gotta save you and your baby. Let's go." And then, I don't know if this actress was doing this on purpose, but this actress is bad. The one that plays the blonde girl who follows Jamie and saves her to get out of the underground, she's like, they're running away. And then I think she's supposed to be out of breath, so maybe that's why her acting's really weird. Or maybe she's drugged up in the movie, like the character's drugged up. But like she says in this really bad line read, she's like, "Go, save your baby, go now." And like, and she says that, and Jamie goes up the stairs and gets out of the underground. But I'm like, that line was terrible. But then, of course, for some reason, she sees her run away, but then she turns around and just goes, "Jamie!" Because, like, she hears a person behind her, and you know who is there? It's Michael Myers. Comes up behind her and impales her head on this spike, like, on the wall that's just there for some reason. But that was a pretty cool kill. But this is a really cool chase. Like, the chase with Jamie and Michael is actually really good. The way that Jamie gets out from underground, she comes out of like a trash can, which is funny that like it leads to the underground of this hospital where the cold is. But she runs away from Michael in the rain, and then for some reason there's a truck driver in the rain just drinking a beer. I don't know why. But he's like, Jamie gets to his truck and starts it, and then he's like, "What are you doing in my truck? What the hell are you doing in my truck?" And she in the car is like, look behind you, like somebody's behind you. It's Michael. And then you see her like scream, and then you see the guy like gets his neck twisted, and it's all bloody. And I mean, it's just like I mean, it doesn't, I don't know, because this is not supposed to be Friday the 13th, and they really, in this movie especially, in the theatrical cut, tried to make it so that really violent, really gory, but way more than any of the other movies before this. Like, this really tries to be intensely gory. And like I said, every Halloween sequel did that after the first one, but I feel like this is the most violent out of all them. The theatrical cut of this, I'm not saying the producer's cut, but the theatrical cut is really violent. And I mean, the kills are good, but it's like, it doesn't fit with Halloween to me. It does not speak fully Halloween. So I don't know. So like, Jamie drives away in the truck. Michael follows after her in a van with the hospital. Knocks her off the road. She flies off into like this barn. And it's really actually really intense because she can't get away from him. He's driving and following her around. He rams her and she flies in her truck into a barn, but she gets out, goes in there, tries to hide, and then you see Michael in the shadows, which they do light Michael really well in this movie, in the shadows where he's hiding and where he disappears. And this movie, I will also mention, in terms of atmosphere, this has really incredible atmosphere for this movie. Like, it really works so well in that aspect that I give it a pass a lot of the time for the theatrical cut, that it just really, really bleeds atmosphere. Like like all these shots look incredible. Like Jamie running in the rain, like Michael chasing after her driving, Jamie running at the beginning through the underground of the hospital. All these shots are dark and dreary, and they really work on just how they look. It looks incredible, this movie. Cinematographer for this movie, whoever he is, did a great, fantastic job, and it really shows. But of course, Jamie gets out of the barn, hides in there, and then Michael grabs her and slams her into this corn thresher where the two spikes go through her chest. And then she's like, "You won't have the baby, Michael. You can't have the baby." And then he turns it on, and just just thinking about it, like, that's one of the grossest kills in any of these movies. And it really did feel like a Friday the 13th style kill, but I was like, oh man, like, that just hurts. And that's so horrible for this character who we loved in 4 and 5, and I guess this one a little bit, but she's not in this much. But the character you loved in 4 and 5 that gets killed in such a gruesome way in this version, it actually is really effective. Like, the gore in that scene actually works for me a lot. But it really is interesting in how this movie is so different. Like, the violence is great, but it just doesn't feel like Halloween. But it starts with her getting killed, and then it cuts to this kid named Danny, who is living in the Myers house, where the Strode family, who are cousins of the family that adopted Laurie Strode from the first one, are living. So Danny, his mother Kara, and then her mother and father, John and Deborah, which is funny, and Tim, her brother. I like how they call them John and Deborah, but that's kind of insulting for the John character, because that John character is an abusive dick. And I know the writer is not implying that John Carpenter was a abusive dick or anything, like, but it makes it look off-putting. You're like, oh, we named him after John Carpenter because we respect him, but then we made this character a douchebag. I'm like, I know John Carpenter's not like that. I know they're not implying that, but it just makes it look bad from that angle. But it has Danny, this kid, waking up from a dream, or looking like he does. I don't even think he dreams. I think he's just looks around and the man in black is there, and he says, "Kill for him, Danny." And then Danny just screams, "Mommy!" And then she comes in, Kara. And then I like the fact that they do have an interesting setup where this character Danny is destined to become like Michael Myers because of this cult. Which, like I said, the cult aspect is so weird in this movie, and it's so out of left field from the first Halloween, but it is an interesting way they incorporate this thing, though, because of how the Danny kid is going to be next in line to become, like, a replacer kind of for Michael, where he will be the next, like, big serial killer. And it does, I don't want to say it works, but it's really interesting, and it does, for this movie's sake, it works, but just not as a whole for the franchise. It's just, you could see why this was completely ignored after this movie. But I did like that idea of him, like, that Danny kid will take over the mantle. And then you get this Kara character who, she just kind of listens on the radio while then she sees a guy watching her through binoculars, like, over next door, and the character is Tommy Doyle, who, it's funny how Tommy Doyle, the character from the first film, returns in this film and is played by Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's first film, I might add, because Clueless came out after this. I think he did Clueless he started during this, or either during reshoots of this, but that's funny to see Paul Rudd in this, like, his first movie is a horror movie. I just thought that was really funny that this is his starting point. And he's fine. He's not bad. He's just, he does talk kind of funny. Like, I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or what, or they told him to do that, but he talks really strange in the movie. But Kara sees him, like, looking from the other window across the street, and I like how she does that because then it foreshadows later whenever he comes into the picture with her. But I like this scene where it has the Barry Sims thing where Kara's listening to the Barry Sims radio show, and then Dr. Loomis is listening to the Barry Sims radio show, and then Tommy Doyle is listening to this too, and then Jamie Lloyd comes in before she dies. She comes in to go into the bus station, and she calls on the Barry Sims thing, like, Michael Myers is after me, like, and then, like, of course, Barry Sims, this annoying character, is like, oh, do we have all the nutcases out tonight? Like, they didn't even believe her. But, like, I like that scene, because that's really cool how all of these characters in the movie are all listening to this one thing, and it connects all of them together, and it cuts really well where it shows them all listening and reacting to it. And, like I said, Dr. Loomis is listening to it, too, and like everybody knows, this is Donald Pleasance's last movie, and he wasn't even alive for the reshoots for this movie. But Donald Pleasance, like, I've always loved in these movies, and he's good in this one, but man, it is hard to see because Donald Pleasance is literally on his deathbed in this movie. Like, he died right after the first filming ended, and then he died before reshoots started because of all the negative, like, teenager reaction to this movie. But Donald Pleasance, like, it's really heartbreaking to watch this guy in this movie because the way he acts, he's a good actor still, but, like, you can just tell he's at his end, and it's hard to watch. Like, it's really sad, and fuck you, Dave Chappelle, or Joe Chappelle, not Dave Chappelle, I don't know why I was saying that, Joe Chappelle, the director of this, fuck him, because he said, like, he thought that he cut a lot of Donald Pleasance's scenes because he was boring, and I'm like, dude, he was fucking dying, like, he was literally on his deathbed, like, fuck you, piece of shit, like, that's horrible. I don't care if he's nice to other people, like, that's fucking shitty that he said that to the guy who's old and is literally, like, they didn't know he was gonna die right then, but he was an old man. He was literally, like, fading, and it's just like, that's fucking shitty that you would say that you think he's so boring that you cut out a lot of his scenes. That's not fair. What an insult. But yeah, Donald Pleasance is good in the movie, but it's just sad to watch because you know he's at his end. And this is the last movie he ever made and the last Halloween movie he was ever in. So it's really sad. And then it cuts to the next day where we are introduced to the characters John and Deborah and Tim. Because we're introduced to Kara and Danny in the night. But we're introduced to these other characters where Tim's just a character that's kind of in the background, Kara's brother. And then John and Deborah are interesting characters because we get this interesting backstory with Kara where it's like Kara like, they don't explain this in the movie, but I think in the commentary for the producer's cut, like, Daniel Farrens explains it, like, Kara is this character who came back to live with her family after she got pregnant, and then John, the father, is such an abusive dick already that, like, he won't have her living there, and, like, he's so angry that I think she got pregnant or something, and comes back, and, like, he's an abusive person, like, the way he talks to everybody, the way he acts towards Kara specifically, and it is an interesting backstory. Like, I wish they would have elaborated more on that, but what we got in the movie in both cuts was fine, because the acting was so good with Kara and with John, like, their banter and how they lashed out at each other was really good. But I really did like that, and I liked how, since Danny is going to become this new killer, like, he's going to become another one, I like the fact that whenever they're arguing, John and Kara, you see down below, like, Danny literally gets a knife and just points it at John, like, right at his chest, and it's really effective and really creepy, and that kid, I think, looks the part of, like, not, like, he looks like he's a creepy kid, in a way, just the way his demeanor was in the movie, but yeah, I really liked their arguments. I thought it was really good, and, like, I really thought that it worked with that family angle, and it actually made me think, oh, this is interesting. This is an interesting backstory that we don't get a giant amount on, but what we get is fine. It's just I wish we got more of that. That was really cool. And then, of course, we get back to where Tommy Doyle, who kept listening to the recordings of Jamie Lloyd the night before, goes and finds the baby because Jamie leaves it at the bathroom at the bus station. Which, did anybody not hear the baby all night long? Did the baby survive all night long without having food or nurturing? Like, it probably would have cried all night. That's just a logical thing. I was like, that's kind of dumb. That doesn't make any sense. So nobody heard the baby, apparently. And then Tommy meets Dr. Loomis there and explains, like, oh, I was the one the first night with Laurie Strode. And I liked how they kind of just immediately connected like that. I thought that was cool. And then we get more of the Strode family, but I liked how we focus on, and this is a really good build-up, like one of the best build-ups in the movie, where Deborah Strode, sorry, Deborah, the mother, is in the house alone and builds up to Michael killing her, but it really works because they do a lot of subtle, like, things where Deborah has, like, this axe that, like, John used earlier to break down this sign that somebody put up degrading his property, but I liked how Deborah has that axe. She puts it in this tub. She goes upstairs, packs up, and it takes its time really well. She goes down, that axe is gone from the tub, and it really works because her reaction where she just looked around like she knows something's up, and then Dr. Loomis comes in and tells her, like, that this is Michael Myers' home, and don't let your family suffer the same fate that Laurie and her daughter suffered. Like, you have a chance, like, get out of here. And she, of course, thinks, well, I'm going to get out of here, and she calls John. And this is a really great scene because John is such a horrible person. Like, such an abusive husband, and the way he talks to Deborah, too. Like, you don't see him abusing her like Kara, but you see he probably did to everybody. Or you just assume. And I liked how he talks, like, she's talking to him on the phone. She's like, John, this guy by the name of Loomis came in, the psychiatrist. He told me that bad things happen here, like people got killed. And then I like the fact that John's just like, Deborah, you've lost it. Like, you watching those damn TV talk shows. And then I love the fact that Deborah stands up to him and says, John, you, like, and that's the reason why we got this house so cheap, because you knew. You knew. And I liked how she's just such a, like, she's so arrogant to where the way she talks to him, like, you knew that, like, this happened, that there's been horrible things in this house. That's why it cost no money at all, really, to buy this house. I really thought that was a good scene. And I like that she said, I'm leaving with the kids, and I'm going to find out, until I find out what's going on. I want you to come with us, John. And then he just says, like, Deborah, you've lost it. And that's a really good scene with her on the phone with him. And then, of course, she hangs up, and then another call, picks it up, and then Michael's in the background, and then the person on the phone just says, we want the baby. And then she sees Michael, and then runs outside, and it's a good build-up, because she goes outside, there's all the laundry being hung up to dry, and she's running through, because she sees, like, a shadow from a distance of him, and, like, she's running through all the laundry up and hanging up. And it really works, and it's really effective, and she drops her glasses, then she gets up, pulls one of the laundry down, and then Michael's there right with the axe, and she just says, oh, Michael, and then he just gets her, and then, like, blood splashes on the clothes. But, like, that was a really effective and kill that worked really well. That is one of the best build-ups of this movie. Like, that's a really good, slow build-up, and it works with so many slight scares that make it effective and don't make it feel cheap, like the rest of the movie, the theatrical version at least. But I really like that. That's a really good, tense scene. And then Kara comes home, and then the mom's not there. Michael hid her away. And then she goes upstairs, and I like how this is a slow scene too, and it's actually effective because you know as the audience that Kara just died, or not, Deborah just died, and then Kara goes upstairs, like, and then there's a long hallway, and then there's an open door with a light on. Takes her time, goes in, slowly opens the door, goes in, and it's Danny and Tommy, because Danny was walking home, and then Tommy saw him. Well, Danny saw the man in black at a distance, but then Danny dropped the pumpkin, and which mirrored the scene in the first film where young Tommy is bullied and drops and breaks the pumpkin. And I liked how Danny sees Tommy and is scared and drops the pumpkin and it breaks, and then Tommy, I think, in his reaction, knows that, like, this happened to me as a kid. Like, I liked how he just said sorry and, like, just helps Danny up and then goes home, and then Kara finds them. And I liked how Kara's immediate reaction, which everybody else would have because Tommy was staring at her through binoculars the night before, she goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" And then he explains he explains himself, and it actually works really well, and it actually makes these two characters not love interests, but they've got a good demeanor, like both of them together, Kara and Tommy. I really like these characters together and how they worked out what to do in these situations, because they had a lot of, like, with the shit they encounter in the movie, it does a good job of having these characters, like, quickly become kind of allies. They don't become real friends, they just help each other out. And I like that. I like when a movie can do that. They don't have to be lovers. They don't have to be best friends. They're just allies. They just help each other out. And then Tommy goes, like, they go to the house across the street, Mrs. Blankenship's house, apartment, and Tommy explains to Kara all about the runes and about Thorn and about all the stuff about the cult and how Michael is one of every other generation of kids in a family becomes a murderer of the family and, like, kills everybody off. And Danny is the next in line. And I really thought that it didn't, like, it's not anything, like I said, anything like the first film, but it does an interesting job with this one, even with this own movie's continuity. It's interesting in how they perceive, like, this cult and all that. But it doesn't make sense, or doesn't work for me, for the Halloween franchise. It's definitely one of the weirdest things to come out of Halloween, the cult. But I liked how whenever Danny goes downstairs after they're talking to, like, Tommy and Kara are talking about the cult, Thorn, and Kara's like, "Where's Danny? Where's Danny?" And then, like, she goes downstairs and Mrs. Blankenship's with him. And I like how she says, "He heard the voice, you know." And Kara's like, "He heard the voice?" And she said, "Yeah, like Michael Myers. I was watching little Mikey Myers the night it happened, like the night in 1963, whenever he killed his sister." And I did like how that connected to the first one, because it does make sense. At the beginning of the first movie, he is walking from across the street in the point of view shot. That actually is a really cool continuity connection, even though this cult thing is weird. But that is a cool connection to the first film. It's just like, oh, okay, it's like he walked across the street from Mrs. Blankenship's after he heard a voice. I like that. And I just thought that was interesting, that because she's part of the cult, like most people are in this town, in this movie. But I like that. And then we get the buildup of John getting killed, which, thank God, because this character, the performance is really good, but this character is such an arrogant, like, dick. Like, he is so unlikable. And his build-up to his kill is great. And in this version, it's shittier, because we get a Friday the 13th style kill, which definitely, I think, out of all the kills, does not fit in this movie, where it builds up to where John gets killed. He finds Deborah's, like, remains in, like, the washer. And then Michael Myers is behind him, shocks him to death with, like, slams him into something and shocks him to death. But then his head explodes, which in the producer's cut, it doesn't do that. So that was extremely over the top, where I was like, why? Like, seriously, like, I understand putting gore in it, but that was just, that does not fit in Friday the 13th at all. And I know the gore doesn't for the most part either, but that really didn't fit, the head exploding. That was really dumb. Like, really? And I think that after this, we get where Tim and Beth, the Beth character I didn't even mention, Tim and Beth are at the Halloween party that, like, is going downtown, because since 1989, after all the Jamie, Michael, and the cops have all been killed, like Michael and Jamie lived, but it says like everywhere else that they died. Halloween was banned, so Beth and Tim are starting to try to bring Halloween back again. Of course, they bring it back in the wrong fucking year where Michael Myers comes back, but they bring it back, and then that stupid-ass Barry Sims character comes in, who this actor, I don't think it's the actor's fault, but God, this character is so annoying and so obnoxious. Like, his lines to me, like, they're kind of fun, but I'm like, I don't like this character. He's just so annoying. He grated on me a lot, and I'm glad he was killed quick. He didn't last long. But then I like the fact that it cuts to where Tim and Beth go home, and everybody's gone because Kara and Danny are across the street and everybody else is dead. But Tim and Beth go home and have sex, and then I like the fact that Kara calls Beth, and Beth's like, she calls her house, and Beth's there, and she's like, Beth, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, we came back, but nobody else was here. And Kara's like, where's Tim? And she's like, he's in the shower. And of course, he's already been killed. But I like the fact that Beth is just, like, Beth and Tim didn't even know anything about this, and then, of course, Beth's like, Kara, what the hell is going on? And then Kara's looking through the binoculars to the other house, and she's like, Beth, there's somebody behind you, they're in this room, and then Beth gets stabbed, and it's really stupid ADD, like, fast cut of, like, her getting cut, or getting, like, you just see it go bam, bam, but, like, it's such a bad cut, and like it has this stupid scream, which is used a lot in this movie, where it just keeps cutting back and flashing. Like, it's so ADD, it looks like an MTV music video or some shit. Like, it looks bad, like her getting killed in this version. It's so bad, so unneeded, like so unnecessary ADD, like flashing light and like fast motion of her getting stabbed, and like it's so stupid. Why don't you just play it out normally, which the producer's cut does? So I like that more about the producer's cut. But I thought it was interesting with that and how it's just so out of place. But then the third act pretty much comes along where Kara and Tommy, like, Kara is taken away, and Tommy and Loomis are apparently drugged, even though they just say to themselves, like, oh, we've been drugged, because the cult gets Kara, gets Danny and the baby. And you realize that Dr. Wynn from the first movie is the Man in Black, which, if you didn't remember that one scene in the first movie, why the fuck would you remember who this guy is if you weren't like a big Halloween fan? Like I would know that, but not casual people would be like, who the fuck is that? Like, who's Dr. Wynn? That one guy from the first movie who said, like, or Dr. Loomis said, he was driving very well last night. Somebody must have gave him lessons, and then it dawns on Dr. Wynn, like, oh, he might have taught Michael how to drive. But yeah, it's so dumb that, like, I mean, it's a fine twist, but it's not a twist that most people would understand unless they're hardcore fans of this franchise. Like, a lot of people would be like, who the fuck is that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, Dr. Wynn is the Man in Black, so yay, I guess. Like, again, the Man in Black character is just so pointless in 5, and in this one, it's just like, it goes so extremely over the lengths of like, oh, it's this one character from one scene from the first movie, and then this cult thing, and it's just so weird. But then it ends again at the hospital, which I thought was a cool way to end it. It was a cool way to go back full circle from the beginning where Jamie is in there. Originally, Jamie was supposed to live till the end, like when they first started, but then either budget cuts or they just didn't want this character in it that long, even though it's insulting that they didn't want her in longer. Whether it's played by J.C. Brandy or Daniel Harris, like, they should have had this Jamie character in it longer than the first act, or in the producer's cut till the second act. But still, it's just like so degrading that they don't keep this character in there that was the most important in 4 and 5. But it ends, the third act now is where they're at the hospital again, which, like I said, was a cool full circle thing. And then it's interesting in this one, Kara is like in a prison cell. In a cell. Tommy gets her out while Michael's coming after him. And it plays this hard rock version of the He's Coming theme, or whatever that's called. You know, the but like that, where it's just the heartbeat sounding like score from all these movies. But it's a hard rock version of that, which I don't know what to think about that. I don't think it sounds terrible, but I'm like, oh, that's really weird. Like it doesn't completely fit with Halloween, but I'm like, it's interesting. It's an interesting like difference, I guess. But the hard rock score, I'm like, okay, yeah, but yeah, Michael pretty much just chases him and Kara and Danny around while they get the baby around underground with all the cells and try to just get him. And then like this ends to where they are hiding and Michael goes into this place where Dr. Wynn and all these other cult members are experimenting on something, and there's all fetuses in like these jars, and I don't understand, like, what are they literally experimenting and crossbreeding? Like, what is going on? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's so incomprehensible, and it doesn't do that in the producer's cut with all the fetuses in the jars. Like, I don't get what they were trying to do. It makes absolutely no sense, or it just doesn't explain it. And even if it did explain it, it probably wouldn't make any sense. But yeah, it was so interesting that they do that, and then like Michael for some reason just goes in. He's had enough. He kills Wynn. He kills all these people, and it's flashy, but I like it. It's flashy ADD where like Michael is killing all these people brutally, and like it's just flashing lights, like a music video, like a scene in a music video, and like it's interesting. But like I said, it just doesn't fit Halloween for me. But then they go to where after Michael kills Wynn and all these people really quickly, Michael chases them down again. But then, like I said, they go to that location where all the fetuses in the jars are, which is weird. And then Tommy in some way finds these things that he can inject Michael with. I don't know what they had. Like he injects Michael with something. With syringes. Didn't explain what that was. What the fuck is it? And then he beats the shit out of Michael. And the thing is that, yeah, it was a cool beatdown. That like Tommy, like this character who from the first movie like was traumatized since. I liked how he beat down Michael and knew who his last blow in this movie. But like, it's so bad and so ADD flashy where like Tommy starts beating him down with this lead pipe or whatever he's got, keeps beating him down, and then there's a shot where it's just Michael's head going back and forth with green ooze coming out of his face, and then the scream again, that scream that has been heard through all these flash cuts, and it's flashing cuts to random stuff that doesn't even make any fucking sense, and he's just like, he's got like pus or like green stuff coming out of his face, Michael Myers, where he just got beat with a bat too much. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? I don't understand. This movie is so incomprehensible. But it is interestingly incomprehensible. And then this suffers more than the producer's cut, but then Dr. Loomis, like, they leave, like, Tommy, Kara, Danny, they're all like in a car and they're like, come with us to Loomis, and he's like, I've got work to do. You run away from Haddonfield as far as possible, or drive away as far as possible. Loomis goes in. All you see is Michael's mask on the ground with a syringe. So Michael's took the mask off. And then you hear Loomis scream, which is the scream from the scene in the producer's cut. So Michael's mask is just on the ground with a syringe. Just, you hear Loomis screaming. Then it cuts to one of the houses from earlier, and it just shows a creepy pumpkin, and the movie ends. And I'm just sitting there like, what? Like, that literally, this movie is so butchered and so made so ADD and so stupidly that it's just so incomprehensible that, like, there are things I do really like about it, but I don't even know what to say. It hurts my head just thinking about how bad this as a movie is, because it's just so incomprehensible and makes no sense in a lot of ways. There's so many things underexplained, and usually, like the first Halloween, where it's not explained or elaborated on a lot of things, like why is he like this and all that. But this movie does stuff like that too, or it doesn't explain a lot of stuff, but it makes zero sense without knowing. Like the first Halloween, you can watch it without knowing like Michael Myers' backstory or anything about that. In this one, they have backstory about like stuff like fetuses in jars, and they don't explain what the fuck that is or what does that even mean. So this movie makes zero fucking sense. At the theatrical cut, definitely. The producer's cut, I'm excited to talk about because it's way different and it's got things that I like about it a lot and things I don't like as much about it. But overall, both of them are mixed bags. But this one is definitely, I think, overall worse. So yeah, this one is Halloween 6 is such a weird fucking movie, but it's so fascinatingly bad that I enjoy things about it. I do enjoy some of the scenery. The atmosphere is great, but it's just a insanely questionable movie. I really don't know what they were thinking. So many cooks in the kitchen. Whether it's this cut or the producer's cut, both cuts are so weird. Producer's cut I think is a better movie, but this still so fucking butchered. So overall, this one I enjoy it for how fascinatingly bad it is. There are things I legitimately like about it, but overall, it's I think the biggest mess in any of the Halloween movies.